Good afternoon, good morning, good day, whenever this meets you. Welcome to the Uniquely Divine Conversations. I'm Caryn Slack. This is my good friend Danielle Graham, and we're here to have conversations about life, spirituality, and everything in between. So grab a cup of coffee, cup of tea, glass of water, sit down, do your dishes, whatever. Listen to us as you move about life. We're grateful to have a space within your day-to-day process right now. And we're going to chat a little bit today about getting back to basics of spiritual practice and just life in general. To reintroduce ourselves just briefly for those of us that are new here, I'm Caryn Slack. I'm a spiritual life coach that specializes in energy work, meditation, and intuitive awareness with a little EFT tapping thrown in there. I'm excited to help my clients connect with their unique expression of self and the energy that surrounds them and supports them, and maybe introduce some intuitive spiritual life practices along the way to find a space where they can reconnect with self and deeper awareness. So, Danielle, would you like to introduce yourself?
Sure, I'm Danielle Graham, owner of Divine Clarity. I'm an intuitive medium offering services like guidance readings with tarot cards, cartomancy, which is reading playing cards, oracle cards. I do mediumship readings as well in both people and animals. I have recently started offering pet Reiki and pet bereavement sessions, just a plethora of things, but to help people and animals find their best selves and to put their best foot forward.
Absolutely. I love that. I love that. Um, I just have to say, I'm going to ask you to help keep me on track today because I feel very fidgety and like sitting still is kind of difficult. So if I go wayward, just give me a heads up.
Alrighty.
Um, but we wanted to talk today about getting back to the basics. So I kind of feel like part of understanding basics for us is understanding what brought us to this stuff. Like, I know for me in the beginning, one of my basics was meditation and getting into meditation, not necessarily to lead me down this path, but to find a activity that could help. Now I recognize it was to find an activity that could help to ground and center and focus my energy. Whereas at the time, I just was looking for something to help me break through some insomnia and to deal with some migraines that I was having. And it felt right. And then it just led down to a whole much wider, complex path. So, yeah, I think part of getting back to basics is remembering why we got here in the first place. What do you think?
Right, yeah, and we have to remember, basics are different for everyone, but I don't know. I guess I don't have a certain thing like that for you. I've always been drawn to this kind of work ever since I was young and seeing it on television or reading about it in magazines. So I remember having clairvoyant or you clear hearing where you can hear certain things. So I think basics for me was trying to hone that skill of hearing. And when I try to go back to basics now, or when I do go back to basics now, that's like the first place I lean into. I just want to sit on my porch and do this here listening exercise that I do. And that just makes me feel like home, if that makes sense. It's, the starting ground, like you said.
Absolutely. I like the way you describe that. It makes me feel like home. Because
Mhm.
that's one of the things. I go back to basics to, okay, one or two simple activities to help me find home within myself again. So I like the way you said that. So can you share a little bit more about what this listening activity is, if you don't mind?
No, this one particular, this is my favorite because as you know, and people out there may know by now, I am not the best meditator, and you have helped me find ways that work better for me. But my very favorite thing to do is just to sit down. We have a three-season porch, and just to sit out on the porch or anywhere in the house if it's too cold to do that. And I set a timer, 5, 7, 9 minutes, whatever I'm feeling like, and I just listen. I quiet myself. Sometimes I'm able to turn everything off and literally just listen to what's happening around me. Other times when I'm feeling like I need to be involved a little bit more to keep myself less distracted, I will listen to what do I hear closest to me.
Mm.
Then maybe it's a clock ticking or what's the next thing I hear a little further? Maybe it's the dog chewing on a bone. And what do I hear past that and past that? And I just keep trying to go past that next thing.
Absolutely. I love that. And to me, that's a good meditation technique, like to help us find a way to be still and witness. That was one of when I first started meditating, there was a couple of different things that I would start my meditations with, and that was the one that felt like it taught me to be still within the busy spaces. So like when life is a lot, because life gets to be a lot in the mornings for me. Um, and if I can have a few minutes, even just to sit in the living room with my cup of coffee, close my eyes, breathe, and listen, teaching myself to be still within that moment when Ava's doing her thing and the dog's doing her thing or what have his thing and it's a little busier, that's powerful for me to get to practice on the regular to teach myself to be still within that extra energy. So you bring a really good point.
And I think you just tapped on the most important thing is to be in the moment. You
Mhm.
know, I had a mentor who taught me that exercise as well as when you're washing dishes, to really try to be in that moment and feel the warm water on your hands and maybe feel the soap bubbles popping, as they go over your hands and you're washing that pan and feeling the pressure of your hand on the sponge on the pan. And it's all just about bringing yourself back into the moment.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So I guess for me, I would definitely have to say that my going back to basics for me is meditation. But for a specific meditation, I find that often when I'm going back to relearn the basics of myself, I will go back into chakra meditations. When I first started meditating, I found myself leaning into just playing chakra music for each chakra and sitting in that music and witnessing what was happening within me. And
Mhm.
so having that space to not work at a guided meditation if it feels like work, not have a specific intention or goal, but be still and sit in that music and let that just discover what I feel as I go through it. That to me is definitely getting into like back to the basics of my own self and my own practice.
Right. And there's so many ways to do it. We were talking about this the other day. It's not just spiritual reasons. When I decided to go downstairs in our home gym again and start exercising again, I was a restorative personal trainer for over 20 years. So when I went downstairs, I could have started where I left off and lifted too heavy weights and did too much on the treadmill. But I decided to make sure I took myself back to basics. It's been a
Yep.
while since I exercised. I went right back to the beginning like I would do for a client of mine.
Yep. And I think that it gives us permission to try again and to try new and to let things be simple. I think that
Right.
definitely makes a difference.
And it very much sets yourself up for success.
Yes,
You go back
absolutely.
to basics, go back to what you know, you're setting yourself up for a successful beginning.
Yep. Taking yourself home again.
Hmm.
Um, it's so funny though, because with the whole exercise thing, there is no back to basics for me.
It's just crazy town.
Well, it's not, I can't say it's crazy, but there's no lean into, okay, I'm going to go back here and start here fresh because there's never been this is how I start. This is how I'm going to move forward. So I guess for something like that, like I would lean into somebody else's suggestion for getting back to basics. Like giving, for me in that space, it would be giving myself permission to not try as hard or giving myself permission to focus on one thing versus multiple things. But there isn't a one thing that I would start with because there isn't it's been all over the place. So
Mhm.
there isn't like I've done this multiple times to get started. So,
Right. I don't know. I guess that one thing, and I did put do not disturb on. I just want you to know. Apparently that didn't work.
oh, I didn't hear anything.
My phone just went off. Um, Getting back to one thing, I think
Yeah,
is basic. So you don't want to overwhelm yourself. You don't want to do too much. You don't want to take on too much.
yep,
Just start, keep it simple, stupid.
absolutely. So, what
Mhm.
are some of the other things that, like, if you're talking to a client or you're talking to a friend and you're offering support as to help people see how to get back to the basics of things, what is one thing that you offer them?
Actually, it's something similar or that listening exercise.
Right.
When I am in that situation where I'm talking to someone who I feel needs to get back to basics, they're usually in a state of disarray or scatteredness or chaos or, something where we need to turn off that outside noise so they can be still enough to hear the voice within.
Yep.
That's the most common.
I love that. I love that.
Mhm.
I have, I guess I have leaned into a couple of different things for clients and for myself, or for friends. Like the notion of if you have a deck of cards, just take a moment, play some soft music, take a couple of deep breaths, shuffle them up, spread them out, and see what comes up for you that day. And to get into a practice of just doing that on a regular basis to invite in a little bit of that self awareness, as well as like the meditating on our heart energy or our heart light is definitely one that I feel like we get back to often is a intention for, and I guess maybe not even necessarily a full-on meditation, but simply sit and witness your heart energy.
Mhm.
Feels like a basic because there's so many people that when we get busy with life and we get running away with things that we forget to tap into that heart energy. So simply learning to be back and visit with that feels good.
But I think that's important to note as well. It's not that we're ever disconnected. That doesn't exist. It's just that we're so busy out here, we can't hear it. And just taking that moment to stop yourself, to witness that heart energy. And if you don't feel like you're in the mindset to be able to do that yet, pulling a card is a fantastic idea.
Absolutely. I find energy work wise, when we are getting back to basics with people within their energy sessions, root chakra work and grounding
Mhm.
is
Definitely.
a go-to often. And when people come in and they're overwhelmed with life and emotions, that going into that root chakra work and that grounding is okay, we're going to start here. We're going to do this first. We got to find that safety and stability in that body. I like that.
Funny, I have found that with my last few clients that I've had over the last 2 weeks, both of them were feeling scattered and indecisive and unsafe decision making in their life. And one of them has been out mountain biking outside, even in this weather in New England, and the other has been jogging. And they're both
Right.
doing very much grounding exercises without realizing that your body, your soul, everything knows what you need.
Right. And that's sometimes, like you said, that's part of getting back to basics is
Mhm.
listening to looking at the activities in your life currently that help you feel balanced, nourished, joy, peace, happiness, whatever it is. What are the basic activities in your life that help you feel that? And okay, let's focus on them. That's a really great idea. And it's funny you say that because I had a session with a client the other day and we were talking about some of the life stuff that was going on that was overwhelming them. And they're like, I don't know, I just like, and it was just a casual conversation that we had started talking about life and what's going on. And she's like, I like powerhoused through a workout the other day with a bunch of squats and I don't usually do that. And we reference that notion that working on building the strength within that root chakra and sacral chakra. And she's like, I never even realized that. So, like you said, it just shows up sometimes.
Mhm.
And if, as long as we can listen to ourselves, we can find what that is.
Right. And another thing, it was one of the client who was out in nature. I had said to him that he needed to do some sacral chakra work, and we looked into the emotions that he had been feeling recently. And when I was giving him suggestions, I said the easiest thing that you could do is just bring the color orange into your life. And he moved his sleeve back and showed me an orange bracelet that he had on. And he said he found it on the trail. And he's like, this dirty, simple piece of orange yarn. I needed it and I put it on and I've had it on ever since. And I'm like,
Yep.
just listen.
Absolutely. I love that. Well, and that's one of the things like within the bracelets that I make or the stones that I choose personally, and we've had this conversation kind of before, but it's okay, what honors the intention of the energy I want to bring into my life. And maybe it doesn't have to be complicated. Maybe we just get to start with the intention itself and just let the intention show up in our life a little bit. And I love that, like you said, just wearing that color. Okay, my intention for this color is this. I'm going to allow that to be in my life more.
Right.
I love that.
Mhm.
Um, so one of the things that I am personally working on, and I'm hoping to be able to structure it to offer it as a like a small group activity for some people that are interested in doing it, is a release of old beliefs that no longer serve me. And I'm focusing on one particular belief and I'm moving through tapping with that. But the whole process of it isn't, okay, how do I move through and release that belief? Because that feels like a lot of work to figure out how to do it. It brings it back to, I'm just simply going to forgive that this belief is there and allow the intention that it gets to be released and sit in that energy for a week and then go from there and see where it takes me from there. But that notion of just simply being in that energy of, I'm going to forgive that this belief exists to begin with and give it permission to start releasing and go from there and trust that everything else will happen along the way.
It's crazy how we're so used to packing this mental suitcase and putting all these beliefs in and feeling like we need to carry this suitcase and everything in it for all the days of our lives. And when we talk about releasing something, we're like, no, no, I've been holding this for 20 years. I need to keep it. When we're traveling, we do take the old stuff out that we don't need, maybe the winter clothes that we don't need, and put the bikini in to go to an island. We're changing that suitcase all the time physically. We need to change that suitcase mentally as well. There's plenty of room. Take some stuff out, bring some new stuff in.
Absolutely. So, what are some of the basic things of daily life that you find you lean back into? Like, do you have a basic routine or a basic set of meals that you have? Like, what are some of the basics of everyday life?
That's a very interesting question. I suppose I do. I think, to make things easy on myself. So when you said meals, I don't think there's a specific meal, but I will make something that I'm used to making that I don't have to think about, something that just makes my life easier. Because when I'm feeling overwhelmed, the last thing I want to do is take a recipe out there this long and try to figure it out and things I don't need. I just want to bring it back to basics. So whatever's simple to cook, whatever's simple to put on, whatever's simple to do with the dogs. I just try to keep it to a bare minimum, I guess, when I'm feeling overwhelmed.
Absolutely. I'd have to say one of my basics that I lean back into lately is soups. Like, I feel like having a pot that I can just put some stuff in and tend to it feels comfortable and cozy and easy and excited and interesting for me to do. So I'd have to say meal wise, that's what that is. That's would be my go-to. It doesn't matter what kind of soup. Usually it's potato or maybe it's chili or I don't know, different taco soups, that kind of thing. But then I'd have to say one of the basics that I get back to in my day-to-day life would be finding the basic reset of my space. Because when the space is all cluttered or overwhelmed or what have you, I feel that way. So like getting back to the basics of getting the dishes done and having the living room clean, those are my basics. The living room and the kitchen, if those are good, I feel settled. Everything else can figure itself out. But that, I guess when I'm getting back to the basics of finding that ground level, doing the dishes and having the living room clean, it's not always easy for me to find there. And often the dishes don't get done the way I want them to, but that would be some of my get back to basics.
Yeah, I was just thinking about that. I think making the bed, because I don't make the bed all the time, but when I make the bed, I don't even care if there's clothes on the floor. When I make the bed, I feel better. I'm like,
Yes.
now it looks good, and can walk out of the room.
Yep. That's you bring a very valid point, making the bed. And making the bed and cleaning up my corner of the room, having that set makes me feel like I'm back to basics. And gives me a space to land. There is a little video clip out there. I think it's a Marine. I don't know who he is, but he talks about the notion of making your bed and how it does a couple of things. Like, validates that no that you can start your day and make your bed, and you can have this one task that you have completed, and it's a good way to start the day and honor that you can complete tasks and move into the day with a trust in that. But then also when you come home at the end of the day, that it's made and you have that nice made bed to lean into and to get into at the end of the day. And I just realized I didn't make my bed before I left, and I'm going to want it made. So do you ever like make your bed like an hour before you go to bed?
No,
I've done that.
I don't think so, but I have, because I have two black dogs. So like I know pulling the covers up helps to assure that there's not going to be, my sheets aren't going to be full of black hair. Because they do run in and out. I try to keep the door closed most of the time. We have cuddle time at night, but if they're around there during the day and jumping around and playing, the hair is going to be everywhere. So I have in the middle of the day pulled that up. But that's not I guess it is a for me thing. That's just
Don't want to sleep with
a
dog hair.
preventative action that I
Yep.
do. It's not for my own mental wellness.
Yep. It's funny, and I'd have to say it's Monday nights, so my husband does his duty night at the fire department overnight Monday nights, and it's Monday night. So like when I get done work, I'll get home at probably 4. I'll make my bed at that point in time, because having that made bed to land in when he's at the firehouse, it's like this own little cozy nook for myself. I will have to make my bed like when I get home at 4 today. Okay. I didn't realize that's a basic in my life. Apparently it is. Um, because we've talked about stones before, what are some of the basic stones in your life?
Oh, I'm very much, first of all, I like the stuff out in nature. There's pieces of wood and rocks all over my house. My husband is like, really? We need more rock. I'm like, but I don't have one that looks like this. So this is a petrified piece of wood that's with me all the time. I have rocks from different places. So Maine feels like home to me. Every time I pass that border, I can just feel everything in my body relax and the air just feels better in Maine. So I have rocks and pieces of wood from Maine all over. I love white birch. We had a white birch tree in my front yard when I was growing up as a child, and I have loved that tree ever since. So every time I see a piece of white birch on the ground. I don't peel it off a tree, but on the ground, I will pick it up, stick it in my pocket. So I have white birch everywhere. Just things out in nature to me, it more so than crystals. So I'm very much about stones.
Very cool. I love that. The white birch, that's cool.
Mm,
I'd be interested what the symbolism of white birch is, because,
right. There's a
oh,
piece of
see?
it right behind my desk.
That's cool. That's a big piece too.
I know it was a good score. I have
Nice.
lots of little ones strewn out around too.
Very cool. Um, I'd have to say one of my basics is a salt stone.
Mm,
I've added those into my Reiki sessions. Like I'll have my clients hang on to them because it gives them something to hang on to. And I've used it within my own meditative work and practices for a while. So that's my basic, is to go back and hold a salt stone, because I feel like it honors that notion of protection and release or cleansing, because salt has been used in different traditions for years for that. Um, I'd have to say salt stones, hematite,
yeah.
wearing hematite, and I have to say, as far as like when I'm doing work like this, labradorite. Like I have a few labradorite stones, and I find I grab those often. Um, Fluorite for focus and positivity. And I think this year, one of my basic stones is citrine. Like, I don't know if you can even see that.
That's
I have
the
some,
orange one, right?
yep.
Orange.
I have some honey citrine beads that I got in recently that I've been working with. And that feels like that is a basic to get back to. And that's different because citrine is, I wear it for getting back to the reminder that that positivity, that laughter, that brightness, and that abundance gets to be in my life. So that feels like
Mhm.
that's a basic for me this year. So
That's one. Isn't that a stone with that supports creativity as well?
I do believe so, yes. Yep.
Yeah.
And I think it is very much I want to say, I think it's sacral and solar plexus work, chakra work,
Mhm.
but yes, creativity.
Yeah, creativity is very much the beginning of something. So
Hmm.
back to basics.
Very
Mhm.
cool. I love that. Any other thoughts about getting back to basics?
I don't.
Mm,
I don't know. We've covered so much. I mean, I'm sure there's a million things.
yeah. Even like,
What about, have we, go ahead.
no, go ahead.
I was just going to say, did we talk about getting back to basics in work?
Oh,
Yeah.
oh, uh-huh.
I mean, work
Um,
for us is going to be very different than work for other people, but I think, in general, the idea of kind of taking that step back and starting over once in a while, or starting over fresh with something new once in a while is getting back to basics. No?
yeah, yeah. That I'd have to say is probably a space where I am challenged with finding the back to basics because often there are a ton of new innovative ideas that I can think of. And I love the notion of bringing them up. And that seems to be where the energy is and the hyper focus is. And then like it kind of filters out and getting back to the intention of that or getting back to this is what my goal is, getting back to, okay, this is what I want my general outline or plan to be
Mhm.
often. I probably should do a little bit more often, but yeah, that's you bring up a good point with that.
I I think too, because this has come up for us on multiple occasions too, that we get excited about these things and we're in this world day in and day out, and we, hear about these things that are up and coming, and we know about the chakras, etc. And then we have this person who listens and they're not quite sure what a chakra is. And so we have to remember once in a while to bring it back to basics in that way too. I
Yeah.
think, we forget to, all of us step back a little bit and be like, all right, well, wait a minute, this is what this chakra represents, just to talk to those people who need the basic, not
Yeah.
only getting back to basics but giving them the basic.
Yeah, you've got a very good point there. And the getting back to the basics of meditation is one thing that I can lean into easily with clients. But that getting back to remembering the basics of, okay, a chakra is the energy centers of the body and they each have their own energy and they each have their own process and space in the body and what have you, and sharing that basic information is that's a good reminder. I'm glad you actually brought that up.
Yeah, when
um
I do readings, I start with normally, guidance readings, I start with checking into my client's chakra energy. And I ask where it is they need to place the most focus and why. So I always say, do you know anything about the chakras? And some people will say yes, a little. Others will say, I have no idea. And I always say, don't worry, whether you're a Reiki master or you know nothing, I'm going to talk to you the exact same way. I'm going to tell you what it represents, how it works, what we need to get moving in there, what energy needs to move. So you
Absolutely.
forget sometimes.
And I think that's a really cool experience too, to be able to be like, I'm going to get back to the basics no matter where you are, because I
Mhm.
think it also is very easy for us to dive into the intellectual knowledge based notion of all of this stuff. And we forget to that when we bring it back to basics for, okay, let's figure things out on a basic level for ourselves. We actually invite an inner awareness. So often people that have been doing this for a while also need to get back to the basic. It's not just
Absolutely.
learning the basics as a newbie, but getting back to the basics as somebody that's done it for a while.
Right. And how many times in your podcast, I'm getting confused with ours, Uniquely Divine Conversations, and yours is Unique Beauty and Meditation Podcast.
Absolutely.
When we did the chakra series, how many times did you talk about something and I was like, oh my God, I never thought of that? Or I talked about something in the chakras, and we've both been dealing with chakras in different ways for years. But sometimes you can say something to a Reiki master where they've said, oh, I haven't thought of that in a long time, or I never thought of it that way at all. So
Yeah,
we all have something to learn from going back.
absolutely. And I think that to build on that notion is so much of this work that we do is such an inner personal almost sacred experience within us that we want to share it with the world to validate that this is what we're experiencing. But within that, we, with everybody sharing their own experiences, complex or basic, ours can get lost. So when we bring back to that basic, in a nice, safe space, we allow for our experience to be authentic
Mhm.
versus try to fit ourselves into another experience. So when we go back to basics, we're creating a foundation that we build our own experience on versus I have to make my experience fit into this structure. So
Right.
you bring up a
Mhm.
very valid point. Absolutely. With that in mind, I would love to invite people. If we are talking on this podcast and we bring up topics and you're like, I need you guys to revisit this, this is not really making sense to me and I want to know more, please reach out and let us know because we may forget that we need to get back to basics with that. So, and that offers us an idea as to where to lean into this conversation a little differently. So feel free to reach out with us if you have any questions or thoughts on anything.
Definitely.
Very
And feel free to let us know how you get back to basics.
Yep,
What's comfortable for you? What's your go-to?
absolutely. Um, and if in general, if you have any ideas or things you want us to talk about on the podcast, we would love to know some of that. Very cool. So, do we want to pull cards today?
I did you want to go get
I got one right over there I can go get. So,
Sure, you know what? I'll go while you go get the deck.
okay.
So again, I have my own Divine Clarity deck that I created from photos that I took myself of things that bring up emotion or feelings inside of me or take me back to a place of knowing or memories. And I'm just going to ask what it is the listeners of the Divine Conversations podcast need to hear today. This is just so basic, but this is one of my favorite pictures. My husband and I, when we first moved to where we currently live, we drove all over just, to find out where we were to get the basic lay of the land, to figure out what was around. And we went into the store and just the sunlight on the pottery on the shelves just struck me as so beautiful. I have never been able to find the store again. I have no idea where it was, but that whole moment in time is just a really good memory for me. But I just love the basic shapes of this. Something so simple, something so seemingly normal can be absolutely beautiful or seen differently by different people, different times of day. This is going to look very different without the sun shining on it. So I think that just means basic is very different for everyone getting back to the basics. And what it looks like for me may not be what it looks like for you, but it's okay as long as it feels right.
I love that. And I love the notion of that getting back to basics helps us find those little moments in life. That is really
Mhm.
cool. I love that. And like I feel like your whole deck that you created is about finding those seemingly basic moments in life and witnessing the beauty within them. And that is such a really cool practice to get into.
Thank you. It's been 15 years at least since I saw this place, and it still brings up such a wonderful feeling inside of me. I loved that day. I loved everything in it.
Very cool. So I went and pulled out the Practicing You deck by Elena Brower. I like this because I feel like this is a good deck to kind of come back to ourself and practicing ourself again. And some of these cards have words on it, some of them don't. Some of them just have colors and like a watercolor theme to it through the deck in general. And I feel like this is a great deck to pull out a card and be like, okay, what does this mean for me? There are little practices on some cards, so we're going to just see what this deck has to offer us today.
How exciting. Who knew there was so many different things on that?
Right? So I don't have a space to spread out my cards, so I'm actually just going to hold on to the deck and kind of hang out with it for a second. And I'm kind of feeling like we're going to go in through the bottom. Okay. So the color is pink. I love the notion of that self-care and that self-love. And I feel like self-care and self-love is such a basic foundational piece within our practices and within our life, that is a thing that we need to get back to. So like when we are looking to make big transitions or make things happen in our life, getting back to that notion of self-love is a really key foundational piece within that. And I feel like that pink circle reminds us that everything will come for a full circle as long as we have that self-love within it. So the words on the card, this is the confluence of self-care and service. Inhale, open arms wide. Exhale, offer yourself a hug. Repeat until you feel more connected to yourself. So the actual physical activity, when you inhale, you open your arms. When you exhale, you hug yourself. So you could absolutely go through the day and give yourself a hug with this card, or you could start with a basic activity of sitting down, taking a breath, playing some soft music, and look at what that self-care and self-service or self-love aspect is within your life and how that gets to show up on a very basic level within your life. So
I love that.
card.
I love that it gives you little activities.
Yeah, and there's some in here that, like, for example, this one, it's just the purple circle. So I feel like there's also that more intuitive knowing with this deck. So I have to, this is a deck I want to work with more. So it must be this as a reminder.
Nice.
So very cool. So we want to thank you guys for being a part of this conversation. Like I said, if you have any questions or topics you want us to address, reach out, let us know. You can find us on social media. We have a unique Divine Conversations page on Instagram and on Facebook, as well as I have Unique Beauty and Meditation on Instagram, Facebook, and YouTube. Danielle, where can they find you?
Oh, it's Divine Clarity on Facebook, the one in the United States, not in Canada. It is divine_clarity on Instagram, and divine-clarity.com for the webpage.
Love it. Very cool. Thank you for chatting with me today. I appreciate your time.
It's always a pleasure. I love it.
Very cool. And we will visit you next month. And we'll bring another topic to you. Very cool. Continue to celebrate your beautiful self and have these good conversations.